In other news, the Queen has led the UK's tributes to President George H.W. Bush, who's died at the age of 94, describing him as a great friend and ally of Britain. President Trump has declared a day of national mourning for the 41st President of the United States, who he called a great family man. During his time at the White House, President Bush led the first war against Saddam Hussein, but lost the presidency after only one term, in part because of an election pledge that came to haunt him. Our US correspondent Greg Milam reports.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush.
His inauguration as president in 1989 was the peak of his political career.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
By his side, Barbara, as she had been through so much of a long and eventful life. Born in the America of the 20s, he was raised in a large, wealthy family, his father a senator, passing on a tradition of public service. At 18, he was the Navy's youngest fighter pilot in World War II, flying combat missions in the South Pacific. One ending in rescue by a US submarine in shark-infested waters after he was shot down. He went into the oil business. It made him a millionaire, and a political career beckoned, standing for Congress.
But generally speaking, it's letting the market, it's letting the supply and demand.
In a way that will strengthen the United Nations.
And later becoming US ambassador to the United Nations and also director of the CIA. After 2 terms as vice president to Ronald Reagan, he campaigned for the top job with this famous mantra on taxes.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
That promise backfired when, having won the presidency, he did just that. But his term was dominated by world events, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and most memorably, war in the Gulf.
As I report to you, air attacks are underway against military targets in Iraq.
Operation Desert Storm followed the invasion of Kuwait by Iraqi forces in 1990. Airstrikes and a ground attack to remove Saddam's forces led to the surrender of many Iraqi troops and a ceasefire within weeks. Bush was later criticized, though, for not pushing on to Baghdad to remove Saddam. He felt it would cost too many lives. The decision seemed popular at the time, but the economy fell into recession, and Bush paid the price when challenged by Bill Clinton in 1992. An independent, Ross Perot, also took votes from Bush. He maintained an active life, even skydiving regularly to mark special birthdays. But gradually his health declined, and he developed a form of Parkinson's disease. When his wife, Barbara, died in April, it took a toll and ended the longest marriage of any presidential couple in US history, 73 years. The flags are at half-mast in the place where he served as the 41st president. The 45th paid his tribute.
He was a very fine man. I met him on numerous occasions. He was just a high-quality man who truly loved his family. One thing that came through loud and clear, he was very proud of his family and very much loved his family. So he was a terrific guy, and he'll be missed, and he led a full life.
And from that old Cold War adversary, this from Vladimir Putin. As US president during one of the most important periods of world history, he showed political wisdom and foresight and always sought balanced decisions, even in the most difficult situations. He was the president of a very different America in a very different time, the longest living in history, and a man who led a remarkable life. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Well, George.
Millions of Americans are tonight mourning the loss of their former president, George Bush Sr. He's died aged 94 after suffering from a type of Parkinson's disease. He was a Second World War hero who helped end the Cold War and went on to fight the tyranny of Saddam Hussein in the First Gulf War. Tonight, moving tributes have poured in, including this from the Queen. She said, President Bush was a great friend and ally of the United Kingdom. He was also a patriot, serving his country with honour and distinction in office and during the Second World War. Donald Trump went on. President Bush inspired generations of fellow Americans to public service. And former President Bill Clinton, who defeated Mr. Bush in the 1992 election, said, "I am grateful for every minute I spent with him and will always hold our friendship as one of my life's greatest gifts." Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore looks back on the life and times of the 41st American president.
We last saw America's 41st president in April, in deeply poignant circumstances, as he buried his wife, Barbara. It was time to reflect on an astonishing partnership, and as he posed with three of his successors, of George H. Bush's role in American life.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
He had just served 8 years as Ronald Reagan's vice president.
So help me God.
Congratulations. He'd been a congressman, an ambassador, the head of the CIA, so his qualifications were not in doubt. But what would he do with the presidency itself?
I will keep America moving forward, always forward, for a better America, for an endless, enduring dream and 1,000 points of light. This is my mission, and I will complete it. Thank you all.
His luckiest moment came early. As a young aviator during World War II, his plane was shot down, and he bailed out over the Pacific Ocean. He was the only survivor. 45 years later, he was waving farewell to Ronald Reagan and beginning his term as America's 41st president. These were tumultuous years as the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed.
And we just have to wait and see.
And there was a single event that would transform his presidency. Saddam Hussein's sudden and shocking invasion of Kuwait in August 1990.
5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
He rallied world opinion, famously stiffened in his resolve by Margaret Thatcher, and he created an astonishingly broad and successful coalition that evicted Iraqi forces. It was a diplomatic and military triumph for Bush, though questions would linger whether he should have taken the opportunity to remove Saddam from power. Domestically, though, he was haunted by 6 words.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
That broken promise, tough economic times, and the arrival of a young and charismatic rival in the form of Bill Clinton doomed Bush's dream of winning a second term. But of course he would have another profound, if indirect, influence on American politics. His oldest son was destined to become president as well. An extraordinary double act from a single family.
These days,
Towards the end of his life, George H. Bush was interviewed by his granddaughter, Jenna, who asked him to reflect on his return to the White House to witness the unveiling of his son's portrait.
It was exciting. Anytime you go there, there's a certain sense of awe and wonder about the experience, and a lot of memories come flooding back. I'm proud to be next to your dad there.
He stayed active in his final years, even skydiving on his 90th birthday. And in the toxic, divisive environment of today's America, there is a nostalgia and a deepening respect for the decency and honor of George H. Bush.
And finally, in just